So we've talked about picture graphs, so now I'm going to talk about bar graphs. Bar graphs are what you make in your folders, forgot what we call them, but your folders where you graph your spelling tests and your math tests and your comprehension tests, where you color in the line and it makes a bar. That's what a bar graph is, okay? So I'm going to use the same example that we did for our picture graphs with the stars and just turn it into a bar graph instead of a picture graph. Okay, so we have our table still, and the title is Stars. Mom, Dad, Luke, and Emma all saw stars, and this is how many each of them saw. Okay, so if we want to turn that into a bar graph, what do you guys notice that's different about this than our picture graph? Well, one thing is that it doesn't have a title, and that's a mistake. It should have a title. So let's add a title to it. And the title should be the same as our table. So the title is stars. So on our bar graph, the title should be stars. So I'm going to write stars up here. Okay, now there's something else on here that's different. And if you look right over here, this graph has numbers. Okay, our picture graph didn't have numbers, but our bar graph does. A bar graph always needs to have numbers, and it always has to start at 0. Okay, 0 is what it always needs to start off, because if somebody didn't see any, so we don't color any, we don't make any bars for them, we need to know that they had 0. If we put a 1 here, that would mean that if they didn't have anything colored in, that would mean they still saw 1, right? That doesn't make sense. So it has to be 0. Okay, I think that on Think Central, I think one of your lessons has like a puzzle penguin or something like that. And it asks about like what's the mistake. Well, one of the mistakes is that their graph starts at 1, but we know it always has to start at 0. Okay. Now to make a bar graph, all you do is you draw bars and you draw them up to the number that they saw. So Mom saw 7. So her bar is going to go up to the 7. So it's going to look like this, okay? Going to go it's a little crooked, up to the 7. Come back down, and you can color it in if you want. I'm not going to color it in because it'll just waste the marker, but it'll be colored in normally. And then we go to Dad. Dad saw 3, so his bar is only going to go up to the 3, which goes to about right here. Luke saw 5 stars, so his is going to go up to the 5. Just going to do this. It's kind of hard to see. Okay, there's his bar. And then Emma only saw 2, so hers is going to go to the 2. Okay, now just like on a picture graph, it's pretty easy to answer simple questions like who saw the most, because you can just see whose bar is the tallest, right? But if it asks how many more did Mom see than Dad, you have to look over at the numbers, because there's no pictures to just count the pictures. You have to look at the numbers. So Mom's went up to the 7. So Mom saw 7, and Dad goes up to the 3. So Dad saw 3. So how many more did Mom see than Dad? We would have to take Mom's, which was 7, and subtract Dad's, which was 3, to find out that Mom saw 4 more than Dad. Now, you can also just start at Dad's and go up until you get to Mom. So here's 4, 5, 6, 7. So Mom saw 1, 2, 3, 4 more than him, because he started at 3, and in order to get up to the same as Mom, he had to go up 4 places, okay? It's also a comparison problem, which means you could draw comparison bars. So if we're comparing Mom and Dad, just by looking at the graph, we know who saw the most, right? Mom saw the most, because look at hers, okay? So Mom gets to go on top of our comparison bars. And if Mom saw 7, that means the 7 goes up here. Now we want to know how many more she saw than Dad. We know that this circle right here on our comparison bars is for the word more or fewer. And fewer means less, so it could also say less, okay? Now the question is, how many more did Mom see than Dad? So do we know the number that goes next to more? Or is that what we're trying to figure out? That's what we're trying to figure out, right? We don't know how many more she saw. That's what our question is. So this one's going to be blank. But do we know how many Dad saw? Yes, we do. We can look at our graph. So Dad saw 3 stars. So he goes right here. If we know the top number, that's the biggest number. If we know the biggest number, we have to subtract, just like our equation that we already did. So 7 minus 3 equals 4. So that would mean that that 4 goes right there. Mom saw 4 more stars than Dad. Okay, so that's how a simple bar graph works. Now, some of yours on Think Central have the bar graphs going this way, right, instead of up and down. It's the exact same thing. That just means that the numbers are down here and the names are over here, okay? But I'll show you how that works too. So, I'm going to keep our title. But then on this side, we're going to write the names, okay? So we have Mom, Dad, Luke, Emma. And down here, what are we missing? We're missing our numbers. So we're going to write our numbers on the bottom this time. Now remember, when we're doing our numbers on a bar graph, we have to start at 0, okay? And it always goes at the corner. So this little corner right here is 0, okay? And I'm just going to draw little lines like this so that it's easy to see where the numbers are. I'm just going to make it a little bit longer, okay? Then each little line gets a number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now we do our bar graph just like we did before, except for instead of making our bars go up, they're going to go sideways, okay? Now this time, it doesn't matter whose bar you draw first, but since Emma's is closest to the numbers, I'm going to start with hers, okay? And at our table, we remember Emma saw 2 stars. So starting at Emma's name, we're going to draw the bar out until it reaches the 2, which is right here. So Emma saw 2 stars, okay? So her bar just goes that way instead of up. Luke saw 5 stars. So his bar is going to go out to the 5, which is right here. So Luke saw 5, okay? Dad saw 3. So here's the 3. Dad's bar is going to go out to the 3. And Mom saw 7, right? So hers is going to go all the way out to the 7. Okay? The bar graph is the same, right? If we turned it this way, it's the same as the one we already made before. We just made it sideways, okay? So it doesn't matter if it's up and down or side to side. It's the same. You just look at the numbers. So Emma's bar goes to the 2, so she saw 2. Luke's bar goes to the 5, so he saw 5. Dad's bar goes to the 3, so he saw 3. Mom's bar goes to the 7, so she saw 7. Okay, and that's how you make a bar graph. So the things that you have to remember is that you have a title, you have your labels or your categories, and then you have your numbers, and that they always start with 0. Okay, now the tricky part is when it starts asking questions, like 2-step questions about it, okay? So maybe it gives you a question like, let's see. Okay, let me write this question. Okay, Luke, okay. Luke went outside again and saw 3 more stars. Okay, how many stars let's see, how many stars did Luke see total? Luke see in all. Okay, let's read that problem together. So it says, Luke went outside again and saw 3 more stars. How many stars did Luke see in all? Okay, so we have to look at our graph to know how many he saw at first. How many stars did Luke see at first? He saw 5. And then he went outside again and he saw 3 more. So that means we're going to add the new ones that he saw. Okay, so at first he saw 5, and then he saw 3 more, so we're going to add 3, which means that altogether Luke saw 8 stars. Okay, so sometimes it'll ask you questions that you can't answer by just looking at the graph because it gave us new information, right? It told us that he saw 3 more. That's not on our graph. It doesn't show those 3 more stars that he saw on our graph, right? But we knew how many he started with because of the graph, and then we could add the 3 to find out how many he saw now. Okay, so sometimes it'll give you new information that you have to use to answer the problem. Okay, I'm going to change this just a little bit. I'm going to keep the same bars so that it's easy. And I'm going to call this animals now. And let's see. Let's say the top one is ducks. And then we can have horses, cows, and dogs. Okay, so the same bar graph, I left the bars the same, but I changed what it's graphing. So this time this bar graph is graphing animals. So maybe it's animals that are at a farm, okay? And the animals at that farm are ducks, horses, cows, and dogs. Okay, so at this farm, there are 7 ducks, 3 horses, 5 cows, and 2 dogs. Okay, now it might give you a tricky question like this. Let me show you. If it said, the cows, horses, and sheep were in the field. Altogether, there were, we'll say, 11 animals in the field. How many sheep were in the field? Okay, so let's read that question together. The cows, horses, and sheep were in the field. Altogether, there were 11 animals in the field. How many sheep were in the field? Now look at our graph for a second. Are there any sheep on our graph? No, there are not. But this question is not a mistake. We can still find the answer to this question even though the sheep are not on the graph because we have enough information that we can figure it out, okay? This is going to be a two-step problem though, and sometimes there's going to be two-step problems that have to do with graphs, okay? We've done two-step problems before in class, but they never have to do with graphs. So now we're just adding our bar graphs plus our two-step problems to do two-step problems with graphs, okay? So it's not as tricky as you think if you just break it down, okay? So let's think about it. The cows, horses, and sheep were in the field, okay? So picture a big open green field and picture some horses and some cows and some sheep, and they're all just out there eating the grass and having fun, okay? And it says that altogether there were 11 animals in the field. So total, out in the field, there's 11 animals. If you counted all those horses, sheep, and cows, there's 11 of them. Okay, so there's 11 animals out in the field, and we know that they are horses, cows, and sheep. Okay, we don't know how many sheep there are, but we do know how many horses there are, and we do know how many cows there are. Okay, so if we find out how many horses and cows there are, we can figure out whatever animals are left, those got to be the sheep, okay? So horses, we know that there are 3. Cows, we know that there are 5. So out in the field, there are how many cows and horses? 3 plus 5 is 8, okay? Here's our field. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, there's our 11 animals out in the field. 3 of them are horses. 1, 2, 3. 5 of them are cows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of the animals are either horses or cows. Okay? The question is, how many sheep were in the field? So if we know that 8 of them were horses or cows, the only other animal out there were the sheep. So that means whatever animals are not a horse or not a cow are going to be the sheep. So we know that there are 11 total. So we take our 11 total. We're going to subtract 8 because that's how many are not sheep. So if we take away 8, right, we take away the horses and we take away the cows, we are left with 11 minus 8 is 3. That means that these 3 animals right here were the sheep. Okay, so sometimes it's going to give you questions and it's going to have information that's not on your graph, but it doesn't mean you can't solve it. You can still solve it. You might have to do 2 steps to figure it out, but you will be able to figure it out. Sometimes drawing a picture can help, or if you already know the equations, you can just write the equations, okay? But this one was talking about horses, cows, and sheep. We didn't know anything about the sheep, but we did know that there were 3 horses and 5 cows. So if we just drew all the animals out in the field, we could easily cross out the horses and the cows, and we'd be left with the sheep, okay? So that's how bar graphs work. Trying to think if there's anything else. Just remember that you always need to start with a 0. They always need to have labels and a title, and it doesn't matter if it goes sideways or up and down. It's the same thing, okay? If I just turn it like this, now it's an up and down bar graph, okay? So it doesn't matter which way. Both ways are the same, okay? Word problems, just break it down into little steps. Figure out what do I already know, and then what am I trying to figure out, okay? And draw a picture if you need to, if that will help you, okay? If you want extra practice, you can use your math workbook if you picked it up from the school, and there are more problems in your math workbook in Unit 5 on bar graphs that you can practice in your workbook, and you can practice drawing graphs in there, whatever you need to, okay? Let me know if you have any questions. I hope that helped. You guys are doing awesome. I miss you. I love you. Keep up the great work.